All right, so this is the sixth session, and today's session we're gonna be talking about a very important and an interesting topic, which is opportunity assessment. So, as far as the RPA business analyst role is concerned, the opportunity assessment is considered to be one of the most important and key component in any RPA COE driven process. And we will do a deep dive into the opportunity assessment. We'll try to understand what are the different ways of identifying what is the right process for an RPA, and also we will try to understand that how we can find an effective process that will suit the automation journey for an RPA. Now, opportunity assessment, if we look into the definition, it's pretty simple. We can say that it is the process of evaluating any idea or a concept. Now, let's say I am an organization, I'm working in an organization where there are multiple processes and multiple projects, right? So now the business would come to eventually to the RPA COE team to in an ask for automating certain stuffs, right? Now, we as a technical team or as an RPA forefront, it is evident that we understand the right parameters to evaluate an idea or a concept and do the proper technical analysis to come to a conclusion that whether this specific process or a project would be suited for an RPA automation, as we have already understood that what are the benefits that we get out of an RPA, right? So we have an FT benefit, we look into the ROIs, we work for better client satisfaction, we work for complete digitization, we work for having faster volumes of transactions to be processed. So all these are the factors that contributes to have an effective RPA project. Now, these opportunity assessments are the way of identifying those benefits out of each and every idea or a concept that can come front in terms of RPA automation. So this opportunity assessment also helps us to determine whether there is a sufficient strategic merit for a solution development. I cannot take a specific RPA project or an idea and approve it for an automation where I do not find that there's a merit of doing an automation to it. Let's say any project or a process where it is not rule based, the process is not steady, the process changes every now and then. There is no documentation, there's no consolidation, there's no SOP. Such projects does not suit for an evaluation for an RPA, right? So opportunity assessment helps us to understand that do we have sufficient strategic, functional, and technical merit to develop an automation solution, after which my company will have a benefit or will have an ROI for the investment that I'm doing in the specific RPA platform. So if we look at the diagram at the bottom, so we have couple of phases, and we can divide it into four different phases. One could be the process walkthrough and operational analysis. Now, what happens in this phase? So in the process walkthrough or operational analysis, we generally try to take all the ideas or the concepts of the processes that have been submitted. We start categorizing those processes as per the business need. Now, let's say out of 10 projects that got submitted, 3 projects are client facing. It will directly impact the revenue. So we would definitely prioritize this 3 and then deprioritize the remaining 7 in another hierarchical way, right? So that's how certain prioritizations can happen based, and that is solely based on the business need. We cannot foresee or we cannot put any hard and fast rule right up front. Okay, so process walkthrough and operational analysis helps me to identify the right processes. Let us go through each and every idea or concept that has been submitted for automation. Let us evaluate it with respect to all the parameters that we have learned, and certain parameters which we will be learning in the forthcoming sessions will help us to understand that what is the right process taxonomy or the categorization of the process that we need to understand to choose the right process and or choose the right idea or the right concept. Now, the process walkthrough workshops to review processes in scope and determine automation potential for each activity. Now, at times what happens is when we run an ideation event kind of a concept within the company, that I want all the businesses to come and submit their ideas. Okay, now in that case, let's say 100 of ideas got submitted. In that case, what we do, we try to create a, let's say, a process evaluation workshop What will happen in that workshop? We will try to identify the right processes in mass. Let's say I create a team of 3 members each. Okay. And I set them up to go and evaluate all these 100 submitted ideas, and they run through a process evaluation workshop where their task would be to evaluate all these ideas submission that got submitted and come out with the top, let's say 20, or let's say top 30 projects that would drive a revenue or that would drive an ROI after the RPA implementation. So that what is generally getting done in the process walkthrough and operational analysis. We will walk through each and every process submitted by the business ops. We will analyze each and every aspect of the process and see that what is in scope, what is automation potential, what is automation not potential, what is partially automation potential. We'll talk about it in the upcoming slides. Next is cost and benchmarking analysis. Now, any project that you talk about in software industry, there is always a cost associated with it. Certain projects are upfront charged to the client directly in terms of delivering the solution. Certain are, let's say, value share projects where company does not get a direct revenue or money, but they get a certain percentage of the value share from the client. So there are different, costing strategies. So based on the current organization where I'm working, or whatever are the organizational goals my company has, based on that the costing and the benchmarking analysis would be done. Now let's say if I'm doing this for an external client where I have a direct revenue impact, so I will quickly think in terms of dollar, right? So I would expect that, okay, I have to select 10 top RPA projects from these by doing an opportunity assessment, out of which, let's say, I would get $50,000 as an upfront charge from the client. Correct. So we will do those cost analysis. What is the benchmarking? Cost analysis and benchmarking is nothing but comparison to industry. Now what happens is, uh, let's say you got a tender from a client where, let's say there's a company who has approached you to develop an RPA solution, and they have given you this requirement that, okay, these are all you need to do. Now you need to do a cost analysis and benchmarking analysis and tell them that how much does your company going to charge for this work. Okay. So cost analysis is nothing but your development charge, your labor charges. I mean, let's say your developers, your charges, cost benefit will generally include, your development charges, your resource cost, any software or licensing cost, plus your profit. Correct. You will have a profit margin. So this everything combined is becoming your cost that you are going to charge to the client for delivering a specific RPA project. Benchmarking means, let's say you are working for a firm where you have competitors like Accenture, you have competitors like any other consulting firm like Deloitte, you have EY, who are into RPA consulting. Now if you know that your client would have eventually reached out to any of these for a second quotation. Correct. Now let's say you are saying that this project I will do with $10,000, or sorry, 10,000 K dollars, certain some amount of money, some XYZ, or let's say $90,000 you are charging. Correct. Now your discharge needs to be very much competitive to what is the benchmark of the industry for such specific kind of work. Now what if Accenture or any other company gives a quotation of, let's say, $60,000? You would lose that work, right? $30,000 difference. So client will go and sign the deal. Correct. So benchmarking is also very, very important, but this is not the core BA's role. But when you are working for internal projects rather than consulting, it could be based on your organizational goal, that what is the cost analysis you are doing. But generally benchmarking happens when you are doing an outsourcing or you are doing an RPA consulting services. That time you need to be aware of how much is the competitors charging for this specific amount of work that I'm going to do. The third one is the RPA assessment and business case. So you're going to do a thorough analysis of the opportunities that got submitted. We have already understood, what is complexity. We will also talk about it in the upcoming slides, that how we do a complexity benefit analysis, how I can say that whether this project is very complex, medium complex, or not at all complex. Correct. Cost savings, that means if I'm doing this RPA for any of my internal process, am I having any cost savings? Cost savings can be, let's say, in terms of FT benefit. So let's say currently I have 10 people or human resources working for a process. Now, if I develop an RPA robot which will be able to do the work, and I might get a cost benefit of, let's say, 8 FTs can be released. So, 8 people or human efforts can be reduced, and I can keep 2 for any validations or any errors. So that could be my cost saving. There I was paying for 10 people. Now I'm going to pay only for 2 people. I'm getting a cost saving of 8 human resources. Correct. So that could be one of the assessment criteria for cost saving. Business case, again, is it an investment or is it a cost? Correct. So certain business cases are done as a part of investment. Like I'm investing certain amount of money to digitize my entire business process. Correct. In that case, I might not have a cost saving. I might have, that might vary. Correct. And the last one is POC recommendation. POC is nothing but proof of concept. Now let's say any company is starting RPA right from the scratch. They never had any bots, any automation done before. Now how would those companies know that if I go with UiPath or if I go with automation anywhere, if I go with Blue Prism, if I go with Microsoft Power Platform, which one is the right platform that would suit my purpose, and I need to spend as much as less money as possible. Correct. So in that case, what companies do is they will go and ask that, hey, let's say I go and talk to UiPath and I say, hey, I am a firm, I'm having around 20 plus projects that needs to be automated using RPA. So can you develop a proof of concept? A proof of concept is nothing but of the minimum viable product kind of a thing, that if let's say I'm trying to automate any accounts or any finance process, okay, I will give majority of the complex part of the task and ask UiPath or any other consulting firm to develop a robot to show me that this process is automation potential, or a developed bot in UiPath is potential or has the potentiality, or we can develop or program a software robot using UiPath which can accomplish my process task. So that is what is called as POC. So UiPath is going to go and develop a proof of concept. They'll come back to me and say, hey, I have developed a small bot which is able to do this task, and you can have a look. Now once I see and I examine, I test it, I say, oh, you know what, everything is working fine, then I go and give a full-fledged contract of my other projects to UiPath or any other consulting firm. So proof of concept is, it's not 100%. You give a certain portion of your project or process idea, they develop a model or a prototype rather to tell me that yes, our platform is suitable and this is the amount of money we are going to charge you. Okay, so even when you are doing an internal process automation, certain internal stakeholders might come and ask you, hey, can you develop a POC for me and show me that my process is automation potential, and I want to test it how it works. Correct. So in that case, what will you do? You will take some of the majority of the steps which are very important and crucial, and you would go and evaluate, you'll go and eventually develop a robot and give them back as a prototype, and they're going to test it out, and they're going to come back to you and say whether it suits the purposes or not, right? So now, when you talk about opportunity assessment, this is very important that you also have an aim and approach. So what is the prerequisite that you need to have? So business management to provide the process backlogs, a high level description of the process at an organizational level, as well as the details of all the business stakeholders. That's the prerequisite. Now, let's say I'm onboarding a new resource who is going to work as an RPA business analyst for me. Now, what I'm going to do on behalf of Abstract, I'm going to give all the previous documentations, the process backlogs, the hierarchical documents, all the projects that Abstract has been dealing with different clients, so that this guy understands that okay, this is the work that I need to indulge in, these are the backlogs that Abstract has, and these are the different stakeholders I need to communicate to. So that becomes the prerequisite that I as a company need to provide certain sort of an impetus or certain essential things like process documents, organizational documents, stakeholders data, so that the business analyst can understand the business. Correct. Now what is the aim? Now, if I'm hiring a business analyst, I have given all these things. Now, what is the objective? The objective is this one, right? My aim would, as a business analyst, would be to calculate and understand the automation complexity of the in-scope processes. Now, let's say we are dealing with 10 projects right at this moment. Okay, every project has a different complexity. Something can be medium, one is high, another is low, another is medium. right? Now, the first and foremost a business analyst to do is to understand the reasons of this complexity and see at what are all are in scope for these projects. In scope means something that is part of my automation solution. Out of scope means something that I'm not going to put in my automation solution, right? So that's what is the first step. Then you're going to calculate and understand the automation potential of the in scope process. First you will do the complexity, that whether it's a medium, high or low complexity guidelines. Then we're going to understand the potentiality, that whether this whatever I'm talking about being in scope, is it 100% automation potential, or do I have still anything in this in scope parameter which are still not cannot be automated, kind of a reevaluation. Then what we do, we map the benefits, that what is the benefit that I'm going to get out of it, as we have already spoken about. It might be direct benefit, cost saving, FT benefit, business improvement, CSAT, blah 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 blah, right? Those are the things we need to bring out here. Now, map the processes into automation quadrants in order to prioritize in scope processes. This we will be talking about in the upcoming slide. So what is the automation quadrant for us? Okay, now this is the prerequisite. We have the prerequisite done, we have the aim done. Now we have to understand what is the approach. So approach means I should have a strategy in order to go ahead and understand, what is the approach or the path or the pipeline that I'm going to follow in order to work for all these projects, right? So first of all, I have to devise a strategy to prioritize. Prioritization is the key. Without prioritization, and when you have bulk of processes in mass, you will be very much puzzled as a RPA COE that which one to take first. So get the business logic, get the business requirement, and start prioritizing, that I'm going to do this first because this is client facing. I'm going to do this project second because this is going to get me $20,000 plus revenue to my company, correct? Now, second would be understand and lay out complexity factors. That's my second step. First, I prioritize. Then what I do is I try to deep dive and see what complexity are those projects all about. What is they're dealing with inside? What are these processes? I need to understand and lay out a high level design. Calculate the complexity. After I do the analysis, I'm going to calculate whether it is of low complexity, medium complexity, or high complexity project. Then we do a calculation of the automation potentiality, that how much can I automate it? Are there any human involvement required? If there is a human approval in the process, let's say there could be a potential drawback that this process might not be 100% automation potential. But in today's world, there are a lot of new concepts in RPA that has come in, where if there is anything required, such as let's say a human approval, we can still go ahead and do human in the loop kind of a concept and do the automation where a human dependency does not become a bottleneck for me. Okay, then we're going to map the business benefits. What are my tangible benefits? Is tangible is something direct. Intangible means I'm, let's say, not going to get it in terms of revenue directly to my company, but I'm going to get it in terms of headcount benefits, right? Next could be map the processes into quadrants, which we'll see, and then we will prioritize each of the processes for the development work. So that's the strategical approach that goes into when we talk about opportunity assessment. We first, do the aim prerequisite, we talk about aim, and then we talk about the approach. Now let's get into something where we are trying to say determining the RPA sustainability. Now, if you see that what is an RPA sustainability, this concept we can divide it into four major quadrants. Okay, so let's say if I draw a mathematical quadrant, something like this. So this is somewhere my x-axis, and this is what we know as my y-axis, right? So if we hypothetically imagine this graph as an x-axis or as an y-axis, correct? Let me just draw it more perfect. So let's say this is my x-axis and this is my y-axis. Yeah. Now I have four quadrants, right? This is my quadrant 1, this is my quadrant 2, this is my quadrant 3, and this is my quadrant 4, right? So I can put a specific process in any of these quadrants based on the sustainability, or after my evaluation of what complexity it is, what is the automation potentiality that we have been talking about, right? So we need we can put them into any of these quadrants. And what are they? Let's say any project, okay, is not at all automation potential. We evaluated a process, we understood that there is no rule in the process, there is no static steps, it's all, you know, zigzag, there is no fixed rule, the process is not fixed, the process changes over a period of time. There's no point of doing an automation. That means such processes first needs to be streamlined. So what we do, we put such processes in this quadrant called no robotic automation potential. So we cannot do an RPA. So those projects would fall into this bucket. Now, another could be for me is manual or semi-robotic automation. What does that mean? Now, let's say I have evaluated a process and I find that, 60%, 50 to 60% of the process is automation potential. Remaining, 40% or roughly 40 to 50% is still requiring a manual intervention. Okay. In such cases, mostly, in terms of banking processes or financial processes, there are a lot of human approvals that are needed. Let's say it's a budget allocation. Based on the approval, the company will pay out this amount of money to some other company. So there the company does not want an automation, but rather a human intervention, so that a human would go and validate that amount and then approve it. So such processes cannot be 100% automation potential. We tell them that, okay, we can quantify and process and automate 50 to 60%, but what I understand from this is there are certain approval mechanism which cannot be automated. So we tell them that you are into the semi robotic automation quadrant. So both are into manual, because this is completely manual. We are not doing any automation. This is also a little bit of a manual, but it is semi-robotic. That means I'm doing 50 to 60% automation and remaining 40 to 50 is still manual task. Next comes the equivalent quadrant where I talk about completely digital. Here, it's a zero touch automation. That means a process which is 100% automation potential. There is no need of human intervention. I can schedule a specific RPA bot to get triggered at a specific time, and the end-to-end process is touchless. Everything, right from the logging into the application, let's say, to shooting out mails, everything is automation potential. We tell them that this is zero touch automation. We do not need any human intervention. And the last one in digital is, this is also 100% potential. Okay, but let's say, but this would be high cost automation. That means I might need to add certain amount of additional dollars as an investment to do the development work. Let's say this could be because I'm dealing with, let's say, 1 million data that's coming and going out. So if I do a basic query of any database, it is not possible for me to get a response of 1 million data rows. For that, I need to fast track this data processing, for which, let's say, I need to incur a license of any third party software, or let's say about the APIs. Any company where I can get a faster API project, sorry, a faster API connectivity that can help me to pull the 1 million datas in no time. That means to buy that API service, I need to invest a certain amount of money. So such processes are automation potential 100%, but let's say I need to incur certain additional licenses, some application licenses or some server licenses or something or the other. Some infrastructural cost is additionally required to make it 100% potential. So those goes into high cost automation. So if we roughly again see this automation RPA sustainability quadrant, first we have manual where there is no robotic automation potential, then semi-robotic automation where 50 to 60% is automation potential. Then we talk about zero touch where I have everything done with my RPA software, no human intervention. And then I have digital where I have high cost where 100% automation is still potential, but I might need to incur additional license costing. Yeah. All right. So next, move on to the next slide. So here we are doing a comparative opportunity assessment study. Now let's say I have certain processes in my business which I need to evaluate. Let's say one process is accounts payable. Okay, I need accounts payable is a financial process where I as a company need to pay money to other companies. That's what is my accounts payable invoicing process. Okay. Now every company does the invoicing work. Unless and until you generate invoices and you send out, the company is not going to pay you, neither you going to get the pay. correct? So that's invoice processing. AR is nothing but account receivable. So I have a financial team which deals with the work for which I would get the money from other company, right? So there, I might, other companies might place some order, I process the order, I send them the goods, and then I get the money back for my orders that I have placed, or rather I have shipped. So that's the account receivable process. So let's say I have similarly two processes, and I need to evaluate that which process is the best for me to do an automation. So let's say in account payable process, invoice processing, and let's say another is order entry. These are two distinct processes, by the way. This is, let's say, my process one, and this is, let's say, my process two. Okay, and these are the evaluating parameters on which I'm judging both of this process to understand whether I should automate it or not. All right. So what is the process characteristics? Let's say first I want to know whether there is high volume and large number of staff assigned. So if you see, the graph shows that, almost 70% of this process is high volume and large stuff is assigned. Also for AR, 70% or more is also fitting the same requirement. So here it's a tie between both the, for this high volume and high stuff parameter or characteristics, there is a tie between both this process. Okay, now let's look into the second, highly manual and repetitive activities. It is 70%, and here it is hardly, let's say, 2% available, correct? So that means highly manual and repetitive, this process is completely manual and repetitive, this process. Whereas here 70% is almost manual and repetitive, whereas let's say I can say this portion is not manual. So that means, this process is a little edgy over this, right? So like this, what we do, we go with clearly identify business rules and limited judgment, whether this process is business rule completely defined and what is the status. Stable process with lower number of exceptions. Which processes have more exceptions? Remember this formula, exceptions are directly proportional to complexity. The more exceptions I have, the more complex is my process. Requires access to multiple systems. Okay, that means this process involves majority of multiple applications to be logged in, where this process does not. Structured and digital data available, this process is 50%, where this process is having more than 70%, which is not digitally available, right? Compatible and stable system infrastructure, again, this process is AG. Strong business case, this process is AG. So if I do a comparative study of calculation, I find that accounts payable is the best RPA candidate because it is highly volume and high staff is allocated. Repetition of task is, also to a decent amount. Compatibility is also good. I have multiple systems, but it can be a complex. Compatibility with system infrastructure is also good. So all these parameters tells me that accounts payable invoicing process is a better process that I can identify for. All right, so now with this, we will come on to the next module to understand that what is the opportunity assessment factors. Yeah. So opportunity assessment factors can be calculated into different attributes. First is complexity. And we will look and talk about the complexity parameter in detail in the coming slide. So complexity means there are three complexities that is generally utilized as a part of your RPA COE process: low complexity, medium complexity, and high complexity. These are the three types of complexity in which I can put each of the processes that I'm going to evaluate. Okay, so what are the key factors based on which I can decide? Based on type of input method. Let's say any process where I have a direct input method, everything is stable, I can just log into the application and get the data. I can say this is very much low complexity. There is nothing much I need to do. Whereas let's say there is a login available, but you need to do a CAPTCHA sign in. So there is additional step. High complexity means, let's say I do not have a direct login. I need to log in through different servers to get the data. So that means my input method is little complex. So based on certain parameters, I can tell whether my project is low, medium, or high. One is input method, that how I'm sending the input to the data. Sorry, to data to the robot. Second is percentage of free text. How much data is available as a free text? Sometimes what happens is we need to, let's say, process some data within the automation where the data is not available as a free text. I need to first extract the data and do a lot of filtering to prepare the data. So if the data is not available as a free text and lot of techniques are involved in order to get what exactly I need, then it is eventually a high complexity project. Okay, so that's the second point. The third is type and the number of applications involved. So let's say I have three processes: process 1, process 2, and process 3. Process 1 involves only 2 applications to log in and get the project done, work done. Process 2 involves 4 applications. Process 3 involves 8 applications. So just imagine, if I have a robot which needs to deal with only 2 applications for automation compared to a process where a bot needs to interact with 8 applications, where is the complexity high? Definitely in process 3. Let's say you need to send out a mail. To send out a mail, you need to attach a document. Now to get the document, you need to, let's say, log into OneDrive, get the document, attach it in Outlook and send it. Just 2 applications, Outlook and OneDrive. Now let's say your reporting process involves, first you need to log into SAP. You need to download the report. You need to open it in Excel. You need to filter the data, save the data, come back to your Outlook, okay, come back to your SAP, upload this data, get the final confirmed data, then you go to Outlook, then you send an email, or let's say you go to OneDrive, you upload the document and send out an email. See the complexity of the process. I'm having SAP, I'm having OneDrive, I'm having Excel, I'm having Outlook. 4 plus applications are involved. So even if I'm doing manually, it's a tedious task. So it's a very simple thumb rule. The more applications are involved in a process, the more complexity it will be. That means if I have process with 8 applications, definitely is going to be high complexity project at a very high level. There are other parameters also. Number of screens involved. This is very, very important. Number of screens means, now let's say for any of your reporting work, okay, first you log into the web page. That's your screen 1. You click on the submit button. You are redirected to another page. That's your screen 2. There you again click any button. You are redirected to another page, which is screen 3. You then select some data, click on submit, your data gets ready, but that's into another screen, which is screen 4. From there, you check the data, you validate. If something is not needed, you delete it, you refresh it, it gets submitted. You are getting into the final screen F5. And then you send the data. So imagine, just for filtering a data, you are being moved into 5 different screens in your web application. So similarly, an RPA bot also has to follow the same footprint and follow screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, screen 4, and screen 5, eventually come to this place. So the more number of screens are there, the complexity of the bot is more. So first is, we will say that if more number of applications are there, it can be of more complexity is required. If more number of screens are involved, then also there is a chance that we might tag this process as a high complexity or a medium complexity, depending upon the nature of the steps that I'm going to do. This is first. Complexity is the one of the opportunity assessment factor. Second is potential FT savings, which we have already spoken about, that what is this opportunity going to yield? Is it a high level potential FT benefit process where I'm going to get a 20 to 30 headcount benefit if I automate it? What is the automation percentage? What is the potential? Is it no automation? Is it into semi automation? Is it into zero touch automation, or is it into automation with high cost? Correct. So all these factors will allow me to understand the potential FT savings. And what are the 4 key factors here? Percentage of rule based steps. Now let's say I have step 1 to step 10 in a process. Okay. Now in one process, all these are rule based. You have a rule to come to each step and then your conclusion is done. Whereas another process, you have step 1, it jumps with certain condition to step 2. It certain condition, it again jumps to step 8. There is an abrupt nature in the nature of the process. correct? So it cannot be, let's say, much of a rule based, but it is more of a situational or human decision based. That means your project can go into a high complexity, correct? So there you need to evaluate that what would be the yield, what is the percentage of the automation potentiality. So this process can directly go into 100% automation, zero touch, but this process might fall into semi automation because you are having zigzag steps to jump in and jump out. So that's what is this. Next is type of input method also will help you to understand what is the percentage of the automation potentiality. Free text requirement is again a common parameter here. What is the process type? Next is automation quadrant, and this is going to talk about in the upcoming slides. So we again put our high, medium and low complexity project in a quadrant, okay, in a quadrant to see that what how much benefit I'm going to get with what combination. So let's say I have a project which is high complexity, okay, and it is giving me a high FT benefit, but the development time frame is 6 months. So are we going to take a project which falls into such kind of criteria? So based on my organizational need or goals, I would eventually try to map them accordingly and see what exactly we need to do. All right. All right, moving on to the next, complexity analysis factors. So again, as I said, certain factors that defines my complexity. One is standard input. I need to have templatized inputs or standardized inputs across every steps of the process to have a decision that whether my project is going to be of what complexity. Number of scenarios, that means business exceptions. There, if there are too many scenarios in my process, too many business exceptions, it can become a complex process, and I might need to see which quadrant it falls into. Type of applications. Now, whether the websites or the applications that the RPA bot is going to deal with, are they Java based, mainframe based, web based, MS Office based, .NET based? Because let's say mainframe is considered to be most one of the legacy applications, very, very old by IBM. So if you are planning to do an RPA on mainframe system, it is by default considered to be of high complexity in most of the organizations, and the development timeframes also vary from 6 to 8 weeks based on what is the steps you are going to develop. Because IBM mainframe is a legacy tool, it is not that responsive or intuitive compared to today's modern era tools like ServiceNow, Salesforce and other applications. Yeah. Structured input, whether my inputs are all digital, it's readable format or not. If you say that I need to do a PDF data extraction from a PDF file, and if it is a readable format, I can easily do. But if you are giving me an image and you are asking me to extract the data out of it, then I need to take in the help of a supplementary application called OCR, where I need which helps me to identify digits and alphabets from images. And OCR stands for optical character recognition. That's a separate technology that gets embedded with RPA. That also increases the complexity timeline of the process. Unstructured input is not at all encouraged because the flow of the text within the process is not defined, and it is very difficult to design a solution where your structured input is not there. Image based automation. Let's say I'm doing an RPA automation, but I have to log into any VDI. VDI is nothing but virtual desktop interface. Let's say the system I'm trying to access is not local, it is somewhere in some cloud server. So what I do, I need to do a virtual connection, what or a remote desktop connection to connect to that server, log in there and then do the automation. So in such cases my complexity becomes high. Okay. And next is what we have already told, variations or scenarios. If I have lot of ifs and buts in my process, like let's say if my customer, let's say it's a banking process of giving a loan, so there are a lot of criterias. We can say that if banking says if customer's age is greater than less than 18, don't give a loan. If it is greater than 18, if it is less than 18, don't give. If it is greater than 18, give a loan. Okay. If a customer age is greater than equal to 25, give them amount maximum till, let's say, $100,000, something like that. So there are a lot of ifs and buts in my process, if and else rules. So that also makes my process complexity higher. So these are the various factors that you need to eventually evaluate when you go into an opportunity assessment. Standard input, structured input, unstructured input is not entertained. Image based automation are there or not. Variations or scenarios that your automation is trying to go through. Types of applications that are involved. Number of scenarios that are there. All right. Then, as I said, definition of automation complexity can be into three types. One is low, medium, and one is low, another is medium, and another is high. Now, what is low complexity? A project that can be easily developed with not much of technical expertise. Let's say I can record certain steps using my RPA tool, and I need very less customization. Whether it's a, let's say it's a desktop based application or it's a data scraping. Let's say I need to log into Amazon, scrape the data regarding iPhone 13, save it in an Excel. That's a very low complexity project for me, and it will not take more than tentatively 1 to 2 weeks of development time frame. Medium complexity are those where your project requires a lot of data transfer. 3 to 4 applications are involved. You have involvement of Citrix, you have ERPs, you have Oracle, you have SAP. Such kind of enterprise applications are involved. Your data transfer is there, your application has exceptions, your business has exceptions. In this case, we term those projects as medium complexity, and the development time frame is 3 to 4 weeks. These are very high level standard. It's not hard and fast. It can go up and down based on company to company. High complexity project is where I have lot of data to deal with, lot of applications. Let's say more than 8+ applications are involved. Okay, 1 million data rows needs to be fetched every time. It's a combination of Java application plus .NET applications. A lot of exceptions are there. It's a terminal based interface. Those are my high complexity projects where my development time frame could be anything between 4 to 6 weeks. All right, so with that, we are going to conclude this session. So here we have understood, just a quick recap. We spoke about various attributes of opportunity assessment. We understood that what are the factors that drives an opportunity assessment. We need to have the aim, the approach, and then in the approach we need to have a pipeline or a strategical plan based on which we are going to evaluate. When we evaluate a process, we have understood that we need to get into the complexity factor, and also we need to go into the automation potentiality factor. Complexity can be high, medium, and low, which could be of 3 different development time frames. Automation potential could be no automation, semi-automation, 100% automation, and automation with high cost. All right. So with this, we sum up this module, and let's talk about the assignment. So that's a little, a hands-on assignment, I would say. So here what I've done is, here you can see there is a table. So this is an accounts payable process where I'm showing you a monthly volumetric analysis. This is the analysis of the volumes that my AP process team does manually. What I want is identify areas of opportunities for efficiency and performance improvement. So if these are the volumetric analysis of my manual work, can you identify the areas which is compromising on my efficiency and performance since I'm doing it manual? That means if I bring an automation in any of these process details, my process efficiency and performance will increase. And also ideas, identify areas how RPA can improve transaction processing. So let's say here you see transaction processed per month is 3,473. So based on all this data, can I do an automation? Or what are the areas that I should deal with to improve this transaction per month to more number? Since it is being currently done by a human, a team of human, their maximum volume is 3473. If my target is to reach 5K or 10K, what are the areas that I should consider to have this process automated? So that's the assignment.